When was the last time you slept in a stranger's house and felt safe? We're told that Airbnb was a visionary gift to the world's travelers, but it wasn't born out of kindness. It was born from the cold, hard reality of being broke in San Francisco. The year was 2007. Joe Gebbia and Brian Chesky had just moved from Rhode Island with big dreams, but $0. Their rent had just been hiked by 25%, and they were staring down an empty bank account. They didn't have a business plan. They didn't have a revolutionary algorithm. What they had was a 3-bedroom apartment they couldn't afford and a design conference coming to town that had booked every hotel in the city. While most people would have just asked for a loan, they saw a desperate opportunity. They bought 3 air mattresses, a few boxes of cereal, and built a simple website called Air Bed and Breakfast. They weren't trying to disrupt a trillion-dollar industry. They were just trying to avoid being evicted. They charged $80 a night, and to their absolute shock, 3 people actually signed up. A 30-year-old man from India, a woman from Boston, and a father from Utah. This was the spark that would eventually burn down the traditional hotel model forever. Success is rarely a straight line, and for Airbnb, the beginning was a complete disaster. By early 2008, the site was barely functional, and investors thought the idea of sleeping on a stranger's floor was insane. They were drowning in debt. They had tens of thousands of dollars in credit card balances tucked away in binders. They were famously known as the Trough of Sorrow. Then came the 2008 Democratic National Convention. They saw another hotel shortage, but still, no one would fund them. So they did something truly bizarre. They became serial entrepreneurs. They bought massive quantities of generic cereal and designed custom boxes named Obama-O's and Cap'n McCain's. They manually folded and hot-glued 1,000 boxes in their kitchen. They sold them for $40 each as limited edition collectibles. This didn't just keep them fed, it caught the eye of Paul Graham from Y Combinator. When he saw the cereal boxes, he said, "If you can convince people to buy a $40 box of cereal, you can probably convince them to sleep in each other's beds." This was the moment the dream got its first real heartbeat. Even with funding, the company was flatlining. In early 2009, they were making only $200 a week in revenue. They realized that their biggest market, New York City, looked like a dump online. The photos were grainy, dark, and shot on old flip phones. It was the classic product-market mismatch. If the photos were ugly, the rooms felt dangerous. Brian Chesky didn't hire a marketing agency. He did something that doesn't scale. He and Joe rented a $5,000 camera and flew to New York. They knocked on the doors of every single host they had and personally photographed the apartments. They spent weeks in the trenches, acting as their own professional photographers. Almost instantly, the revenue doubled. Then it tripled. They learned a fundamental business truth. Sometimes you have to do things that don't scale to find the thing that will. They weren't just a tech company anymore. They were a lifestyle brand. People weren't just buying a bed. They were buying a sense of belonging in a new city. This shift in aesthetics changed the venture capital world's perception of the company forever. By 2011, the growth was astronomical. Airbnb had reached its 1 millionth booking. They were no longer just a quirky startup. They were a global phenomenon. But with massive scale came massive problems. Imagine waking up to find your apartment completely trashed by a guest who threw a literal drug-fueled rager. This happened to a host named EJ in San Francisco. Her home was ransacked, her valuables stolen, and her sense of security shattered. The internet exploded with criticism. Critics claimed that the business model was fundamentally broken because humans are untrustworthy. Chesky was at a crossroads. He could hide behind the terms of service, or he could take responsibility. He chose the latter. He ignored his lawyers and issued a public apology, introducing the host guarantee. Airbnb would now cover up to $50,000 in damages, later increased to $1 million. This was the trust infrastructure the world needed. By backing their hosts with real money, they built a barrier to entry that no competitor could match. They didn't just fix a PR nightmare. They engineered trust into the very DNA of the sharing economy. The hotel industry finally woke up, and they were furious. By 2014, Airbnb was bigger than the Hilton and Marriott chains combined in terms of room count. This was no longer a hobby. It was an existential threat to the old guard. From Barcelona to Berlin and New York to San Francisco, the legal battles began. Cities started banning short-term rentals, claiming Airbnb was destroying the local housing market and turning quiet neighborhoods into tourist zones. The sharing economy was now being labeled as the exploitation economy. the company had to transform from a tech startup into a political powerhouse. They hired thousands of lobbyists and fought thousands of court cases. They had to prove that they weren't just a platform for illegal hotels, but a way for middle-class families to keep their homes. They began collecting and remitting hotel taxes to cities, trying to play by the rules they had once ignored. This period was the company's trial by fire. It proved that disrupting an industry isn't just about code, it's about navigating the messy, human, and often corrupt world of local government and global policy. Then came March 2020. The world stopped. In a matter of weeks, Airbnb lost 80% of its business. Over $1 billion in bookings evaporated instantly. The company was weeks away from its planned IPO, and now it looked like it might go bankrupt. Brian Chesky said it felt like being on a ship where both engines failed and the hull was on fire. He had to lay off 25% of his staff, nearly 1,900 people. It was a heartbreaking moment that he handled with unprecedented transparency, providing generous severance and help with new jobs. But then, a miracle happened. People didn't want to go to hotels in crowded cities, but they did want to escape their apartments. They wanted cabins in the woods, they wanted homes with Wi-Fi within driving distance. Airbnb pivoted their entire interface to focus on stays near you. The travel industry shifted from international to local overnight, and Airbnb was the only one positioned to catch it. By the end of 2020, against all odds, they went public. Their valuation soared past $100 billion. It was the greatest comeback in tech history. Today, Airbnb is more than a website. It's a cultural shift. It changed how we view ownership, how we design our homes, and how we interact with strangers. What started with 3 air mattresses and some cheap cereal is now a global empire with over 6 million listings in nearly every country on Earth. The business lesson here is profound. Total disruption doesn't come from a better product. It comes from a better emotional connection. Brian Chesky and Joe Gebbia didn't just sell a bed. They sold the idea of belonging anywhere. They proved that in an increasingly digital and isolated world, people are still hungry for human connection, even if it means sleeping in a stranger's guest room. The saga of Airbnb reminds us that the biggest ideas often sound the most ridiculous at the start. If you are struggling, broke, and hot gluing cereal boxes together to pay rent, remember this. You might just be one pivot away from changing the world. The air mattresses are gone, replaced by villas and castles, but the spirit of the hustle remains their true foundation. That is the power of the sharing economy. I hope this deep dive gave you a new perspective on the strategies and the relentless mindset behind these global icons. If you enjoy deconstructing business empires and tech legends in this tech archive style, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on all notifications. That way, you will never miss a new blueprint of history. For those of you ready to explore more boardroom coups and technological breakthroughs, I have handpicked 2 videos for you right here on the screen. Click one to keep watching. I will see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.